Welcome to Watch One, and thanks for logging on. Once again, we survive the week and we move into one of the most interesting periods of the watch-loving year. SIHH is upon us, and this will be my last broadcast for a week's time. So tune in to our Instagram, tune in to our YouTube channel. We're still going to have new content, and I'm going to smuggle as much as I can out of Geneva. But for tonight, I'm joined by my colleague Josh Thanos.
How's it going?
And we are here to answer your questions. This is Friday Free For All. We've got a couple of pre-programmed talking points because there's some great stuff coming out before the show. I want to give a shout out to our audience already up and running in the chat box. Eddie Landsberg, Hachi Zenki, Tom P, Cellar Dweller, Damon Slaughter, welcome. Slackter, my mistake. Thank you, Josh.
Absolutely.
You see, this is why I have backup. Also want to give a shout out to Galta Force. I want to give a shout out to Matt. I want to give a shout out to Don, Snover, Alexi, NATO, Steve, Hypercord, Noah R, Santino, Sebastian, Z, H, and Kiki Fries. Welcome. Whale Hamza, I saw you just joined. Okay, so for today we have a couple of very interesting new model debuts. Why don't we start off with the one we don't have a picture of because I didn't have a chance to load the slide. Josh, tell us about the new Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar full ceramic.
So the watch they just released today, it is a fully ceramic, like Tim said, all black Royal Oak, a perpetual calendar. So just like they have in the stainless steel, with that, they have a white dial and a blue dial in stainless steel. This is going to be an all black ceramic. So picture Panerai 438 made by Audemars, and stuff a perpetual calendar in there, and now you get, that's what you got.
It even gets its own reference number. It is now the 26579, no longer the 574.
CE, yeah.
Now, if you remember, this is a variation on the 52-week display perpetual calendar that came out in 41 millimeters just a little over a year's time ago. The important thing about this one is that I believe it is the first full ceramic watch from Audemars Piguet.
Yeah, I can't think of another one. Absolutely.
So the other thing that's interesting is that it's really, really expensive. Josh, what does it cost?
I think the early estimates right now are what the rumblings are $85,000 retail price.
And just for perspective, Faline has the other Audemars Piguet debut of the last few days' time, which is the new 15202 BA yellow gold. This is the jumbo. This is 39 millimeters. This watch, again, the heart and soul of Audemars Piguet, is $55,400.
That's right.
What do you think about that watch, Josh? I mean, just in terms of the look of the new golden or champagne golden dial, tapisserie, yellow gold case, bezel, bracelet.
I think it's interesting. I personally have not always been a fan of yellow dials. It makes me think of a gold president on the wrist, but I love AP. I love what they do. I'd like to see this in person to see really what the distinction is between the case and the dial. I'm gonna definitely give it a chance. And the 15202 Ultra Thin, it wears so beautifully on the wrist, so comfortable that I can't, even if I didn't like the dial color, I'm still gonna like the watch.
And there's good news for you Joshes out there. The watch also comes in a blue tapisserie dial version. Same JLC derived caliber 2121. 36 jewels, automatic winding. It's got that quirky 19,800 beat rate. Still only about 8.3 millimeters thick. Gorgeous watch.
Oh, yeah.
Wears a little heftier in full gold. But AP bringing back yellow gold last year and now this year.
Yeah, no, listen, yellow gold's on the rise. Rolex is doing it, AP's doing it, so it must be on something, right?
That's a fact. I think, especially in that 39 millimeter case size, it works well. Thin and traditionally sized. I'm a fan. A conditional fan. I got to see it at SIHH next week.
Which you will.
And which means you will too.
Lucky guy.
So jumping into by far the most expensive watch revealed in the last week, a sort of pre-SIHH from a company that's fractionally owned by Richemont, which pretty much owns the Salon International. Greubel Forsey with their Grand Sonnerie.
Oh, geez.
Have you seen this one, Josh?
I was speaking to someone about it. I haven't even seen a picture of it yet.
It's a monster.
Yeah.
So here's what you've got. You've got automatic winding for the Grand Sonnerie feature, which is nice because you can set your watch to chime the hours and the quarters in Grand Sonnerie mode, or simply the hours in Petite Sonnerie mode.
Oh, makes sense.
It's also a 24-second tourbillon, a power reserve, and a minute repeater.
It's not enough.
No, it's not. But you know what is? The price. $1,132,000 US. Keep in mind, what you're paying for here really is the level of mechanical and finishing accomplishment. It's not a precious metal watch. They're building it in titanium. It's 43 millimeters, which makes it one of the most wearable Greubel Forsey pieces by far.
Yeah, it's either a beach house in Fort Lauderdale or a watch.
And
Make your decision.
Exactly. And I will say, if you are the particular kind of high flyer who can afford to buy this watch, you're not going to be disappointed. Greubel Forsey, both as a company and as a product, total integrity, real love for watchmaking craft. Again, it's a company that's still very much under the control and character of the two names on the dial. So you're really buying into a persona and sort of a family when you buy a watch like this, which is nice because for $1 million and change you should get something really special.
You should definitely, get a whole family.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you've got Greubel and you got Forsey. But here's the other nice thing about this watch. A really unique form of micro rotor and no holds barred style in the Greubel Forsey fashion. Their watches are polarizing. They are not afraid to offend a large portion of the small number of people able to pay their prices, which I admire.
Yeah. Well, this is along the lines of like MB&F and things like that, where you get these ultra boutique brands that they basically say, listen, if you don't like our watches, screw you. And then the people who like the watches like them even more because of that, which I kind of admire as well.
Yeah, and the other thing that's worth mentioning is that with 5 to 8 scheduled for completion each year, realistically, this is what integrity looks like in high-end horology. There will never be a flood of these on the market, and even smaller brands have proven able to overproduce the market demand and outstrip it. It's nice to see Greubel Forsey, at least to this point, never will. 80 to 100 watches a year, no more.
That's good. We like those. I mean, the thing is, for us personally, our company, we don't get to see watches like that because those watches trade exclusively between private parties. Because the guys who can afford that watch can afford to, take that private jet, fly out, see the person who wants to buy the watch, make a trade in person, and which is really cool. It's kind of special. It's an interesting, take on being in that range of watch as well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because Greubel Forsey is a company that flies so far below the radar because you'll never see them up on Chrono24. You'll never see them on eBay. When people sell them, they sell them to other Greubel Forsey customers, often with brokerage by the factory itself.
Yeah.
And Stephen Forsey, for a guy who makes $1 million watches, is really accessible and friendly. And I remember when I spoke to him in 2016, I asked him, what was the most impressive thing you saw in the watch industry in the last 18 months? And he said, well, honestly, probably the Tag Heuer Carrera Connected, because the whole concept was to get people into watches via the smartwatch and then get them to stay for the mechanical watch. And he said at that point, it's basically just up to the industry to educate people once they've joined the watch wearing family, bring them into traditional mechanical watchmaking.
You know what, I like that too. It makes sense. He's thinking about it from a global sense or a general sense as opposed to a watchmaking sense, which a lot of times, you get into the watch world, you get kind of snobby, and it goes down the road of, this is crap or that's crap, but it makes sense. I like that. Good answer.
Yeah, and I'll say, there are certain people out there, and one particular watchmaker who invented and made all of his watches. Not always super approachable, so I really appreciate the Greubel Forsey. Untouchable prices, but great company. And if you must have one, our sister brand, Gothberg, is a dealer. Give them a call. Okay, moving forward, I want to answer a couple questions out of the chat box, Josh, because it is just live wire tonight.
That's awesome.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've been here.
This is from Eddie Landsberg, Omega Moonwatch or Diver 300 chronograph?
I mean, personally, I'd go for the Moonwatch. I like the Speedmaster.
I would say, how much do you feel a need to bring the watch in water? Like, do you feel a really overpowering need to dive with this watch? And I don't necessarily mean professionally, but are you going to go underwater? Are you going to wipe out on a boogie board? Are you going to go off the high dive wearing your watch? Because if you are, protect yourself, get the diver.
Right.
If it's just about style, the Moonwatch obviously has a history that's second to none. I mean, what's your feeling about wearing these? If you're just in an office, which one gets the upper hand?
I mean, so like you said, the diver definitely is more versatile. We live here in South Florida. I'd say the vast majority of my watches are divers because of that. Because at a given moment, we can just head to the beach. But if that's not a concern for you, and or you would just want to stay away from the water altogether, the Moonwatch is what you should go for.
Yeah, I think ask what you're going to do with the watch, and that should probably answer which watch you pick. Both great pieces, though.
Yeah, both have good history. Obviously, Moonwatch more than the Diver, but the Seamaster's been made for longer than the Speedmaster, though.
I would say also, if you're looking at the 300 chronograph, you know, you're thinking, oh, it's kind of a Bond watch. It'll always have that stamp of 007 approval from, you know, the mid-90s to mid-2000s when the 300 was usually the watch on Bond's wrist. But keep in mind that the 300 professional chronometer is the icon, whereas the diver is a little bit off the beaten path. The Moon watch is the icon of the Speedmasters.
Yeah, it looks like he's probably looking for a chronograph and wants to figure out which one he goes for.
Good stuff. William, thank you so much for the shout out. I appreciate your kind words. Okay, George is joining us. The Marquis is in the house. Peter K. Sven Van Laar. Welcome, guys. Okay, so question for Josh. Panerai depreciation, specifically something like a 659. I've heard that Panerai has recovered a little bit in recent years, like the last 18 months.
Yeah, recent 18. Well, I'd say it's really last 6 months. So the last about 24 months has been really rough, but leading in from the last 6 months or so, some of the new references they're releasing, some of the blue dials, a 690. I think we said before we had it listed at above retail and it sold. So that's always a really good sign. What reference? 659. I don't think I've seen it yet.
659 is a new watch. It's part of the Blue collection.
Okay.
It's basically in the same boat as the 690.
So I've been asked for this watch, which I couldn't get my hands on. So these are boutique only. So Panerai is doing some really special things. Last year they did 2 price reductions, which really hurt the resale market at the time. Now everything's going in-house because they have to, essentially. And they're releasing a lot of boutique editions, which are good because now they have better control over distribution, which is what we always talk about in terms of value. So that being said, if these watches can be purchased and without a discount, or you cannot get a discount if you want to purchase them through a boutique, then you would think that they were going to hold some more value because everyone who bought them has to pay full click.
Quick question, just direct question.
Sure.
Are you going to get killed because it's a precious metal Panerai?
You're always going to lose on a precious metal no matter what. It's always going to cost you something. But I'd say it depends on how long you want to keep the watch. If you're buying it right now to speculate on it and then flip it down the road 2 or 3 months from now, I think you're okay. If you want to hold this watch for 4 or 5 years, then sell it, then yeah, no, you have a problem. You're going to lose big time on a watch.
The thing is, the strength in Panerai, and maybe I say 18 months, 18 months might be a little bit too far. They did readjust their prices at the beginning of 2015, so that's where my 18-month kind of time frame comes from. But realistically, the rally has been in steel watches, hasn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. And that's what happens. It's the brand gets, all these brands get it, the excitement comes from top down, but the value comes from bottom up.
So we have a question pertaining to value, and a couple of folks have asked this. In the last week, the Swiss Mad watch from H. Moser & C has debuted. Best known as Schaffhausen's other watchmaker, Moser is known for technically accomplished movements, beautifully finished, off the beaten path of high horology. Gorgeous watches. They make about 800 to 1200 a year, 1200 in a good year. The Swiss Mad watch is their one brand, one watch. It is a piece unique protest against the new Swiss labeling laws that are coming into effect in 2017. Now, the idea was that by ratcheting the content requirement up to 60% of value, and I believe it may even be 60% of physical components, Switzerland was trying to protect the Swiss-made label. The thing is, Moser, which claims to place 95% of Swiss-made content into each watch, is protesting by removing the Swiss-made label from their watches, and they are also creating this piece unique that is made of stabilized Swiss cheese. That's the outer case. It has a cowhide with fur strap, and it is blazoned with the Swiss national color in a sunburst red dial. So imagine the Swiss Mad watch from Swatch that came out about a year ago, priced at, I want to say this is like a 7-figure watch. I think it's an extraordinary piece. It's an extraordinary statement, and ultimately that's what it comes down to. This is them giving the finger to the new Swiss-made laws because everyone's not playing by the same rules.
That's
60% versus 95%.
Yeah. What is it? Make Swiss made great again? I think that's their hashtag.
Make Switzerland great again, please. Let's make one country great at a time. Although, given a watch made completely of cheese, great is appropriate.
Ah, look at that.
See what I did there?
So funny.
Okay, so jumping forward, we have hello from Sweden, we have hello from Western Massachusetts, we have friends all over the world. Snover, I noted you joining us from Singapore. Okay, so Tim, what are my views on Nomos? So much hype, but so affordable. How is this possible? I would say realistically, the watches are mechanically okay. You know, the drivetrains that they're using, the swing system is impressive because they built an escapement in-house, but there's nothing truly revolutionary there. They had some growing pains with their in-house calibers, and I think ultimately the reason they're affordable is, first of all, pricing honesty. I appreciate that they are being realistic about the value that goes into the watch, but also the fact that they are simple watches. I don't think it costs as much to make a watch as a lot of people believe. Now, if you go to the high horology realm, I've heard that 25 to 35% of MSRP is the manufacturer's cost. And then I've heard of some companies who shall remain nameless, able to make $10,000 watches for a few $100s. So I think the way Nomos is able to offer watches at this price is, first of all, in Eastern Germany, labor costs are still lower than Switzerland. So there's that. They're being realistic about the cost of the watches, and most of the watches they make are steel. Their in-house calibers are generally very simple, and they're just being honest about how much it costs them to make a watch.
Well, I think also they're making watches to compete with like the Tag Heuers of the watch industry, for somebody who wants something a little dressier, a little bit more traditional as opposed to something sporty. And what I see from collectors is, you have a Nomos, and then you get your promotion, then you go to Glashütte, then you get another promotion, then you go to Lange. That's kind of the trail, because they all have like similar look, similar feel. And it's kind of a nice idea to start with a Nomos. I can see that.
So the other thing is that they've geared up for mass production. Like they are ready to build movements in numbers so much greater than they will need. And I think this is going to wind up being surplus capacity, because I don't think the industry and the demand for calibers is going to grow as fast as we thought back when the boom times were in progress, and ETA was throwing down hard timescales for drawdowns of movement sales. ETA is softening up. I think you're going to see ETA calibers available longer than we ever imagined. And I think all of the companies like Solida and Vacheron and Soprod and Nomos and Technotime that were getting ready to mass produce movements for customers, they're going to find that demand is slack. But they still have that capability. Which is why Nomos can sort of keep prices down. Okay, so question from Brummy Red. He's asking, will the Deep Sea D Blue get discontinued following 2017? I gotta be honest, there's no way to know this, especially since the watch was released out of sequence in August of 2014.
It did, and one thing that we're noticing is, well, number one, there's more and more of them hitting the market on the resale market, but also, I don't know about you guys, but if you walk into your local watch boutique or Rolex authorized dealer, you might find one in the case, which you haven't been able to in the last like 2 years. So that is a kind of an interesting fact. I will say that that I doubt they're going to discontinue it now. If they do, that will be good for the market of the watch. If they don't, and they keep releasing them and shipping them, then you're going to see that watch end up just like the Black Dial, in my opinion.
Okay, this is a great question from NATO Steve, who's asking, any love for the Omega Speedy Tuesday limited edition? Faylene, we have an Omega Speedy Tuesday graphic ready for our audience. Great question, guys. Robert Jan Broer runs Fratello watches, has for a long time, but specifically since 2012, he has featured a Speedy Tuesday Omega Speedmaster focus on memorable models, particular collector examples, editions, everything from the Missions case to some of the more obscure white gold, date, moon phase Speedmasters, just great stuff.
Oh yeah.
Everything that runs the gamut from the X33 to the original, CK 2915. So he just received a Speedy Tuesday commemorative edition from Omega. You should be very proud, Robert Jan. Well done.
Yeah.
So all satin finished case. It is the 42mm asymmetrical case that we've had since the Professional label first appeared blazoned on the watch in 1965. It is notable because it features oversized silvered sub-registers, a vintage Speedmaster text on the dial. The registers are fully luminescent, which is spectacular.
Yeah, that's really nice.
And on the case back notes 2012 pieces commemorating the first year of Speedy Tuesday, but also that it is a Project Alaska 3 tribute. And a lot of folks remember Project Alaska as a white-dialed Speedmaster with a huge, ungainly, reflective red aluminum case.
Yes, yeah.
Have we had any of these in-house, Josh?
Yeah, I think we'd have, since I've been here, probably 2 or 3 of the Project Alaskas. Not they're interesting pieces, probably not the most beautiful pieces, a little bit polarizing, but I'd say in terms of commemorating that event, I think that the Speedy Tuesday probably does a better job.
And the thing is, Project Alaska was a series of watches, so it's very cool for Robert Jan to get the shout out as a Project Alaska commemorative and a Speedy Tuesday commemorative. And the watch, is substantially different from other Speedmasters and other Speedmaster limited editions.
It's cool. Well, I think I don't know if it ships with both, but I have seen it on the brown leather strap and with that NATO strap. So I don't know if it does ship with both or you buy them separately, but that's kind of cool.
I'm waiting for the watch you want limited edition with the rooster on the back.
That's right.
Come on, Omega, we can make it happen.
It'll do. Let's do it. I got it on my truck.
It's the year of the rooster.
That's
right. The
right.
time has never been better.
Absolutely.
Okay, so morning all is coming from Skodo. Welcome. Peter Cervelli, welcome. Corey. Okay, questions coming through. Where is my watch? Guys, that's a great question. Where is my watch? All of these are my watch.
That's
because
right.
I'm not wearing one tonight, I decided to bring out the entire collection. I rode my bike here tonight for the show, so I was not going to wear my Platinum Perpetual calendar in the streets of South Florida. Safe enough, but I didn't want to get run over and smash a watch. I'd be like, oh my gosh, bone through the skin. Oh, I broke my watch!
We got to get you a knockaround you can wear on your bike there, Tim.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something for the staff here to chip in on. Interesting. Maybe G-Shock? How does that work?
You guys, the comments below the video, let them know. Okay, so that's where my watch is. What are you wearing tonight, Josh?
I got my Anonimo. It's a high dive. It's beat the shit, and I love it more than anything. Where am I at? Right here.
Yeah.
So anyone who's familiar with Anonimo, this was an offshoot of the Panerai watchmakers when they moved from Italy to Switzerland. This one is actually one I picked up probably about maybe 2 years ago. So I bought it in essentially this condition, all beat up and scratched up with a PVD, which I love. Took it off the original rubber strap, put it on this NATO, and I don't know, maybe it gets probably twice a month I get to wear it, which is nice.
Anonimo, better known as the Italians who stayed in Italy and kept making watches on the old equipment with the old dies when Panerai moved to Neuchâtel.
That's right, and no longer around, unfortunately.
Yes, also itself, it was sort of revived. That's sort of on life support, but yeah, no, it's no longer an Italian-made watch.
Yeah.
Okay, so questions coming through. Tim, what type of bike do you ride? I actually ride a Holland Exogrid road bike. It's a custom-made titanium bike with inlaid titanium and carbon hybrid tubes. Basically, they create a lattice work out of the titanium, laser etching diamond-shaped forms out of it to create something that's sort of like a shell and a skeleton. Then a carbon tube goes into it, a bladder goes into that, inflates. They get perma-bonded and then autoclaved. So if you put a vise on the pipe, the two materials would stay together. It creates a very nice ride and a fairly light bike.
Permo-bonded and autoclaved in the same sentence. That was good, man.
Oh, thank you. I mean, that sounds like the process for making AP's forged carbon.
Yeah. Maybe it is.
So, okay, Hachi Zenki mentioning in 1999, Donald Trump bought one of Ronald Reagan's wristwatches at auction.
That's right.
Anyone think he'll wear it at his inauguration on the 20th? He may. I mean, it's also entirely possible that he doesn't even remember he did it. He's got a very short-term memory. My guess is shiny objects, whatever's there, he'll be wearing.
Hey.
Okay, so Jimmy from Adelaide, welcome. Cool. Guys, we have an audience from all over right now, and I have to say the concurrent viewership is also excellent. Kiki Fry's asking subjectively the best watch for Donald Trump. Okay, I remember there was a little feature on, I want to say it was Motor Trend, and they assigned a card each of the candidates. And this was very early in the election cycle. I think they gave Donald Trump the Ford F-150 Raptor SVT.
Yeah.
So what is the Ford F-150 Raptor SVT of watches? The watch by character Donald Trump should wear.
Some sort of all-gold Hublot, I assume. Maybe a gold bracelet involved as well.
Remember that oceanographic 4,000 meter in gold with the white strap?
Just the best watch. Really just the best.
It's huge.
Huge.
Okay, question coming from Michael Deach. He's asking, Dicha, excuse me. Thoughts on the JLC Deep Sea Vintage Chronograph? I like it. I assume we're talking about the 40.5 millimeter version that came out in 2012, 2 registers, vintage lume. It's the one that looked more like the original Deep Sea Alarm, but with a sort of vintagey chronograph look. I'm a fan because the size is reasonable, the look is true to history, even if there was never such a thing as a deep sea chronograph. And I think it's a versatile watch you can wear with anything. Plus, it has that water resistance level that you're not going to get in a dress-appropriate timepiece.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think so. I agree with everything you said. It's cool.
Okay.
Actually, I was just offered one.
Oh, cool. Bring it in. We'll have it on the show.
I will say, I think the guy decided against it because he fell back in love with it after he started talking to me about it.
Okay, so questions coming through here. How much of a factor is resale for our clients these days? So let's explain resale as it relates to pre-owned watches, the buying and selling thereof.
Sure. So so different collectors fall in different categories. We have collectors who are high volume collectors, which the resale value probably matters the most to those guys who are going to go through 10 or 20 watches in a year, and maybe have a total budget, right?
Yes.
Then there's guys who are looking to get a fair market value price when they're purchasing a watch. Maybe they're never going to sell it, but they don't want to feel like they overpaid for it. So that's also somebody who's going to be concerned about price. And then you're going to find a customer who, say, maybe is looking for a discontinued watch, and that's why they come to us. Watches that they can't buy at a boutique or can't buy from an AD, then they're going to come to us. And really, at that point, it's just the market price is the price. So it's not so much of a concern in terms of resale value.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that there are the guys who just serially trade with us,
right.
And just for the ease of selling a watch and moving into another watch, they're comfortable, not dealing with the tire kickers and the
right.
scams and the.
Yeah, peace of mind is worth a lot of money as well as time. So if you have a 50, 60, 80 watch collection, I'm sure your time is probably worth a lot. So you have a guy like me who's going to be doing all the legwork for you. You're going to pick a watch you like. We're going to work out a deal that's favorable, and I'm also going to be giving you my thoughts in terms of what you should be buying because you will be trading it eventually. So the guys who we talk about who are going to be doing a lot of trading, I'm always, hey, listen, be careful with this watch because in terms of speculative value, we don't know what it's going to be worth down the road. This watch is on consignment, things like that. So that's the main concern for guys, high volume traders. Mm-hmm. And then as you work your way down to guys who have less and less watches or are going to be trading less, then resale value is not as important as maybe actual value for the watch.
Yeah. The other thing is, it's important to note, and I can't overemphasize this, Watch You Want has never bought a new watch. We just don't have the ability to offer a new watch.
Right.
A new watch is sold by a dealer. Mm-hmm. So
Authorized
we
dealers,
only buy watches that have had a prior owner. So we look at resale a little bit different than that first owner would.
Yeah.
And that's why Watch You Want needs to buy at the best possible price within the pre-owned sphere. And the watch buyer who wants the boutique experience is going to be experiencing MSRP and then depreciation.
Sure.
I will be honest, discounts are real, folks. You can get discounts at the boutique level.
Yeah, depending on which brand, yeah.
Yeah, it's brand dependent and sometimes it's model dependent, like Josh says, metal dependent. Precious metal, very difficult to move right now. Two-tone, very difficult to move right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's also going to be dependent on the time of year. There are times when...
I mean, prices fluctuate during the year depending on a lot of different things. During SIHH, whenever there's a new model, just like in a car, the pre-owned car world and the pre-owned watch world have some similarities. They don't match up, directly. I think we've talked about in the past. You can bring a watch back up to exactly new condition. You can't do that to a car. You drive a car for a week, it'll never be the same.
That's true.
With a watch, you wear a watch carefully for a week, you can absolutely bring it back to new condition. So those are going to be some of the differences. But in terms of similarities, every time they release a new model that looks different than the last model, it's going to devalue the last model. It's just the way it works, right? There's a reason why they redesign models every so often. So people don't go back and look to buy the previous model. But in terms of holding value or in regards to new watches and pre-owned watches, really the difference between it is less, in my opinion, Tim, about the experience, because there are companies who are now professional pre-owned watch sellers, just like us. And my customers absolutely get full attention. They get a full experience. Maybe I'm not going to be face-to-face with them, but they're going to be getting maybe more attention than they would at a boutique. It's really about being the very first owner, and that is really, really important. I understand that. I've purchased brand new watches when I wanted to be the first owner, and I knew I was going to pay a premium to be that first owner.
Yeah, I would say sometimes there are watches that are so finicky and technically weird and built on such a low volume basis that maybe it's almost like buying a supercar. You may not even feel comfortable buying a secondhand one because so much can go wrong so quickly if they're not treated right.
Agreed.
And you might just feel that the watch is genetically a little bit high strung.
Sure.
So, I mean, I don't want to say Vianney Halter here, but the bottom line is that there are some manufacturers where you're going to want that factory warranty from the guy who built it, if for no other reason than to hold him to account and say fix it.
Well, there's also other reasons to buy brand new, and through authorized dealers or through the brands, and that's having a track record with that brand itself.
Yes.
If you're buying, there's certain special pieces, right? So if now I'm a budding Patek Philippe collector, I'm going to be buying. I could go and get a small discount because again they hold a lot of value, but I can go get a small discount on a Nautilus or on some complicated piece by going pre-owned, but the discount may not be worth as much as the access to more special pieces that are specially allocated for customers who are buying retail. So that's access is certainly a perk of purchasing brand new.
So like Josh says, you've heard that expression, you have to buy 4 Ferraris before they'll sell you the good one.
That's right.
That has a watch analog, which would be something like you have to buy a 5960 and a 5980 and a 5711 1A before they're going to let you buy the 5711P anniversary.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is that benefit to having a relationship with an authorized dealer and a brand entirely on the new watch side.
Rolex does the same thing too. I mean, who do you think is getting the very first ceramic Daytonas? It's not guys who have never bought a watch from Rolex before. It's going to be those guys who've been buying Rolex for a long time and not hassling on price.
And that's going to be on a basis of a relationship with the dealer, because unlike Patek Philippe, Rolex is not keeping the names of customers.
Right.
There's no grand complications wait list with Rolex.
Correct.
Okay, so other questions, quick questions coming through. A question about what we think of the Oris Caliber 111. Well, just like with the Oris Caliber 110, it's a really long power reserve, 10-day, more or less in-house caliber. My reservation with it is that first, it's so big, you're never going to see it in a watch that's discreetly sized or traditionally sized. And second, having not had one in-house to test firsthand, I can't say how the single mainspring barrel solution works. In general, watches with really long power reserves and only one mainspring barrel tend to have very high strung and variable discharge rates, meaning that torque goes from being extreme to extremely light. So it's very difficult to get a high degree of isochronism and precision from a single huge mainspring barrel, and that's what the Oris has. There are other techniques, regulations, balance and escapement architecture, things that can be done to improve the isochronism over time. But until I get one in here and I see that 7 days in, it's still running, 280 degrees of amplitude, still sticking to, plus 5, 6, 7 seconds per day or something reasonable, I can't say for sure. Honestly, it exists in a realm where just having an in-house movement is considered to be a triumph. When you're selling at Oris's price range, that's kind of the mindset. So I don't know how it is. It's probably very tough, but I don't know how it is as a timekeeper.
No, we don't know yet.
Other question from Hypercord asking about the Omega Seamaster 223450 pre-coaxial, and he's asking, is it pre-coaxial? Yes, it is. And what do we think about this watch?
It's a GMT, I like it.
Well, the thing is, it's a GMT in the 41.5 millimeter case. It's an interesting watch because it's one of the first of those Bond style case dial combinations, the 300 meter family, where there is no helium escape valve.
Right.
So if you don't like that, if you think it's a gimmick, if it gets hung up on your sleeve and you're looking for something a little bit more straight-laced, I like the aesthetic of this one. I believe the caliber inside is a ETA 2893, which is nice because you can set the GMT hand in half-hour steps instead of just one big single-hour blocks. So that's a nice refinement. It's very thin, it's very tough. You're basically getting the same kind of movement you would see in something like I want to say a Panerai PAM 29. So you're getting a decent caliber that can keep excellent time, that is a chronometer grade ETA, and it just happens to have a module that gives it dual time capability. And with the 24-hour bezel, you can get those 3 concurrent time zones just like the Rolex GMT Master 2. Plus, because it's pre-coaxial, you don't have to worry about it being an older Omega with the first early versions of the 2500.
Right.
Okay, Hachi Zenki, I gotcha.
Huge.
Okay, Kiki Fries responding to the hypothetical about what Donald Trump would wear. Hublot gold, 50 millimeters, fully paved with diamonds. He means.
Probably,
Yeah, that sounds right. With a engraved picture of himself on the case back. Okay.
That's our president.
President-elect for a few more days. Okay, so questions coming through. Wow,
Man.
the Trump,
Yeah.
people really ran with the Trump thing. Time Stands Still is asking me, SRAM, no, Shimano. First generation Di2, still going strong.
Okay. All right, sure.
That means nothing to everyone else but you and me.
Okay. You and I.
7970. Okay, questions coming through. Wow, you guys really did run with this Trump thing.
Oh, jeez.
Who pays for Trump's watch? Mexico.
Oh, man. You guys are comedians here.
This is good. Wow. I need to like copy some of this for my stand-up act. Okay, guys. Do we buy watches that were originally, this is coming from Eric Würzberger, do we buy watches that were originally purchased off the gray market?
The answer is yes. We buy watches basically however they're offered to us, so long as they are original and authentic. So we have I guess you can call it a 45-point inspection that we put through all of our watches, and if there's any question of the authenticity or where it came from, number one, the way we start in terms of we buy a watch, it starts with the person we're buying it from, right?
Yes.
So if we can't identify you, if you're a ghost online, or we think that there's something sketchy, then we're going to go to the extra mile to make sure that the watch that we're buying from you, number one, belongs to you, and number two, is authentic. So, but in that regard, yes, absolutely. If you buy a watch from a company like Joma Shop or Authentic Watches or any of these guys, I mean, yeah, the watch originally came from Switzerland. I mean, the watches all come from the same place, right? Yeah. So, I mean, whether it was sold through an authorized dealer or through a gray market dealer, that really doesn't matter too much to us, as so long as the watches are totally original.
The main thing is that we have standards for what we'll actually buy. A watch comes in with a serial number scratch off, goodbye.
Yeah, no, we don't.
A watch comes in with any evidence of adulteration and non-factory parts, goodbye.
Yeah.
A watch comes in from someone with a criminal record that we can easily Google on the internet. We do a lot of seller background checking when we buy things for tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
Someone says, we ask, where'd you find this, this Patek Philippe 5134? Oh, I found it on the street outside a casino.
Yeah, thanks.
No.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing that we get a lot too. I think because we're an internet company, sometimes we'll have guys who'll just call in and just say, hey, I got this watch, what's the best price? And honestly, as one of the sales trainers here, I put all my guys through a process, and maybe sometimes people feel like it's a little overbearing or maybe it's a little intrusive, but really what we want to do is, because these watches are not just, they're not nothing, right? There's a story behind each watch, and it's going to go to somebody who wants to own it. And a lot of times we get asked, tell me about the history of this watch. Has it had one owner? Has it had two? Who's the customer? Well, obviously, we're not going to release names and things like that. But when I can tell a new buyer of a watch that, yes, we bought this from a customer who's been doing business with us for 5 years. He's a serial trader. He has a lot of watches. And he traded this watch against blah blah blah, whatever it ends up being. That's going to make the new customer a little bit more comfortable, and it's going to show that we actually know who we're doing business with, because we don't just buy watches from nameless, faceless people. We want to build a relationship with our customers, and that's the point of what we do here. And what a lot of the industry is turning towards that as well. It's not just us, honestly.
The other thing that's important to note is that when you know how the industry works, and you know how there's only a couple of big gray market sellers that are selling unsold inventory. You even know which dealers are passing the sell-through to them. And the sell-through concept is something that even the manufacturers factor into their annual sales plans. They're like, okay, we'll force a certain amount of inventory on this dealer so they can get the 2 or 3 hot new products. They're going to have to take 50 closeouts. Those 50 closeouts then wind up in the hands of gray market dealers, because the authorized dealer wants to get its 4 or 5 hot models. It'll sell the other ones that it had to take just because at cost to get them out of the cases. A lot of times we'll see the original dealer cards in those gray market boxes. There's a big difference between gray market and black market, and I think people confuse them too often.
Especially in the watch world, yeah.
That's a fact.
As somebody who's been in manufacturing distribution, black market is completely different than gray market. We're not buying these from Ukraine or one of these places.
Yeah,
where
none of those guys on Narcos are coming in here and selling us watches off their wrists spattered with blood. I mean, okay, there's a realistic
that can be
threshold
washed
for
off,
what
no
we
problem.
will buy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What was it from Deadpool? Lemon water and seltzer for blood?
That's right. It works.
So questions coming in. A couple of guys have asked, and I want to honor their question. This is about this is Captain Zed, and this is James Identity asking what we think of the third generation VC overseas. Specifically, has it found success? I'll speak to the first part of that. The success, no. It lost momentum real soon after SIHH last year because they simply priced themselves out of attainability for the kind of person who used to buy the overseas.
That's right. Oh yeah. So in terms of the market on these watches, yes, the main complaint that I'm getting from collectors who were excited about the idea of the watch, the new the in-house movement, the display case back, the quick release strap, and so those are really, really interesting things. When you increase the price by $7,000 on a watch like that, again, you're pricing out the consumer who was purchasing that in the past. So what it did was they shot themselves in the foot two ways. They overpriced the watch, in my opinion. Again, I don't know what it went in to make it. Maybe it cost too much to make the watch. That's why they overpriced it. Doesn't matter to me. Just it's overpriced in the market, right? So they overpriced that watch. So what happened was people who were excited about that watch maybe sold their old VC, ended up dumping them or selling them at a price that maybe they wouldn't have really liked to take if they weren't planning on buying a new one. See that the new one is going to be roughly $10,000 more. Don't buy that watch. So now it devalues the second generation and devalues the new generation at the same time. So they've kind of basically just shot themselves right in the foot, in my opinion, or that's kind of what we're seeing.
There was a two-step that went on. First, there was a lot of unsold inventory because people guessed, and it was an easy guess to make, that the 20th anniversary of the overseas was going to see the introduction of a new model. VC didn't help itself by teasing this, so there was kind of an Osborne effect. For those of you who remember 80s tech, you'll know exactly what I mean, where this year's model suddenly saw its sales drop and die because next year's model had already been teased with just too much showing of the hand. Now here's the thing. A lot of that second generation overseas content then got pushed to the gray market. And you wound up with a third generation overseas collection competing with the second generation overseas collection priced at, once it hit the secondary market, effectively half of what the new watches cost in steel.
And you can see them even on our website. We have many of them. They're great watches. I really like VC watches. We've talked about it in the past. I think that for a all-steel chronograph in the upper echelon of brands, people call them the Holy Trinity and whatnot. I think the watch, the bracelet, the whole configuration is going to be something that you're getting, especially at the price point that they're selling, like what they're trading for in the low teens. You're getting so much value. I mean, so much care is put into that watch. Unfortunately, the business side of their brand screwed the watch side of the brand, it looks like.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. But just to fully answer Captain Zed's question, do we think it holds up to the Nautilus and the Royal Oak?
Oh, man.
I think the third generation is the closest Vacheron has ever gotten to going head-to-head, equal billing, equal engineering, equal content, equal art and science with the Nautilus and the Royal Oak. I would even say in some respects, the new overseas gives you more content. When you buy a steel watch and you get a leather strap, a rubber strap, a full steel bracelet, a Geneva Seal in-house caliber, you get the same level of water resistance and anti-magnetism that you got back when it had a solid case back, but you get the display case. Honestly, I think you're getting a much more substantial watch, and it's never compared better to its competition. It was just horribly timed.
Yeah, exactly. Timing. Business is all about timing, and that's the problem. A lot of times with these brands, they have their quality, workmanship, the design that goes into it are amazing. The ideas are amazing. The business side is just not catching up, and it's super unfortunate because we love to see those watches trading. They're not trading because of what we just said. No one's buying the new ones, and people have already sold the old ones.
That's a fact. We're in a bit of a doldrums for the overseas at the moment.
Man,
it's great. It's great if you're a buyer, though. It's great if you're a buyer.
Yeah, though, but we don't even see them trading. So it's not that great if you're a buyer because people still have to buy them brand new. So even if you're able to talk your AD or whoever you're getting the watch from getting a nasty discount, you're still, it seems like you might be overpaying for the watch, which is really tough.
I'm counting on the nasty discount.
I mean, it's got to be nasty.
I think you would have your VC boutique over a barrel there, but
It's unfortunate. They don't need to do that to themselves. You know, they're a great brand, and they just need to pay more attention, it looks like.
Yeah, I think they could probably also do with a culling of model lines, and also I think they should almost do what AP did in 2012.
That's right. Let's give a shout out to my boy, City Greek 1. That's right. Yeah, I'll do that all day long. 2,500, sell it three times. Let's do it. It's a little inside joke for me and my buddy Jim.
No, it's all good. We got many friends and family joining in the chat box. Question coming from Andrew Piatek. I'm actually going to hit two questions real quick. One from Time Stand Still, one from Andrew. Andrew saying, are we heading for the next big watch crisis with smartwatches, like with quartz watches in the 70s and 80s? I'm going to say no, because the smartwatch, as we've seen it rendered to this point, is a utilitarian product. People actually do wear their smartwatches to tell time, to get their instant messages, to know when they've received emails, to get the weather, to track their steps, to time their sleep, to measure their pulse. Like, all this stuff is utilitarian appliance application. It has not achieved permanence. You still buy them and throw them out every 2 years. It has not achieved the ability to pull down a premium price, even with Apple's knack for public relations, promotion, their ability to wrap investors and customers around their finger. They were not able to make the Apple Watch edition with the full gold work. It crashed, it burned. By some estimates, only 2,000 were sold. So, in other words, they sold fewer Apple Watch editions than Richard Mille sold, six-figure monstrosities.
Sure.
So no, the smartwatch is not going to replace any luxury product simply because it has not attained the threshold of basically the definition of luxury: more than you need and more than you expect. Right now, it's basically just that, and it's a few $100s.
Yeah, well, before the Apple Watch came out, people were asking us. After the Apple Watch came out, people keep asking, and yeah, it really has no effect. It doesn't seem like it. I mean, I've had a few guys want to sell their watches because they stopped because they're wearing the Apple Watch, but really those guys weren't ever really watch guys when it came to it. They just wanted something on their wrist. I will tell you that. A little bit off topic, but not really. CES was what?
Yeah,
right?
CES
So,
just ended.
Just
CES
ended,
2017.
right? So, and I saw online, I was reading about they're having these fully translucent LEDs. So I'd like to see something moving forward. When you get a watch like, say, this size, imagine having an LCD or LED crystal that you press a little button and now that becomes a screen. That would be pretty freaking cool, in my opinion, right?
Yeah, I mean, I
imagine
think
that'd be like a really cool integration where you don't see it unless you need it.
At some point, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's going to happen in the realm of the truly permanent watch. And by the permanent watch, I mean the watch that outlives you. I can see an Oris, a Longines, a Tissot building a watch that combines some sort of basic 2824 type caliber with a translucent, thin film transistor type thing, where the crystal suddenly becomes opaque and displays an image.
Yeah.
I can see that happening. But again, the problem with the smartwatch as a rival to the luxury watch is that it's not a luxury product.
No.
It's like you will never see, no matter how competent they are, Toyota Pre-SIHH, or whatever the plural is, they will never replace Lamborghinis. They do something so incredibly different and serve a need, whereas the Lamborghini serves a desire.
What about Tesla?
I would say even Tesla is within the realm of a luxury product.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think anyone who's buying a 2013 pre-owned Tesla right now, and they do have a pre-owned program, expects that it's going to last less long than their phone. Like, I think it's a durable product, it's a luxury product. The equivalent of a Tesla in the watch world is almost something we haven't seen. I would say it's almost the likes of like the F. Journe Elegant 48. It's new territory for watches.
Hear that, Jim?
I can see high-end quartz making a big comeback, but I don't see smartwatches, which are only going to get cheaper with mass production,
of course,
supplanting luxury products.
Well, they're already so cheap. I mean, you can buy like a legit smartwatch, that maybe even 2 years ago was going to cost you, $400 or $500. Now you can buy them for like $150 from China.
You're also seeing attrition in the smartwatch space. Anyone out there who bought a Pebble, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is that right now the smartwatch is a threat to the sub $400 watch. So if you're Fossil, if you're Swatch, maybe in some price ranges because Swatch sells a lot of sub-$100 watches. But if you're that company...
I got one of those.
He did. And I've got one too. I've got a Blue Rebel. So
It's a good watch.
if you're selling the watch between $300 and like $800, you're in trouble. I can see the likes of Seven Friday getting themselves into a little bit of trouble competing with smartwatches. Maybe Tissot, which has become Swatch's designee for carrying the smartwatch banner and the flame. Pebble, obviously, if you're actually in the smartwatch industry, you're going to get steamrolled by Samsung and Apple. If you're Fossil and you're selling that watch, if you're Shinola possibly, but not if you're Omega. That's I think Longines is the first echelon, the first price rung where a traditional Swiss watchmaker has nothing to worry about from smartwatches. Below that, yeah, it's all fair game.
It's a different idea when you're purchasing that. Like you said, it's utilitarian as opposed to something that's going to be like like an achievement. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also important to note, since I can answer this in almost like one sentence. Time Stands Still asks, how are the Panerai 8-day movements for accuracy? Well, the good news is Panerai tells you their standard internally is 0 to plus 10 seconds per day. So that may not be as impressive as COSC because there is a huge percentage difference between plus 6 and plus 10 seconds. The bottom line is that they don't tolerate time loss, which is the kiss of death for a watch's precision, and it's a pretty narrow range. Again, I want to say it's like 86,400 seconds per day. If your watch gains 10, you're doing just fine. So they're good. They're very good. Unless you do happen to pick up that PAM 203 with the old Angelus movement. That's an 8-day movement with a single barrel. It'll keep terrible time.
That's right. And it's only going to cost you like 50,000 or so. So
yeah, down from 100 at like their peak.
Oh,
that's a great deal.
Again, which was only like less than 3 years ago.
So, okay, questions coming through. Canuck S opining that smartwatches are not a threat to the luxury watch industry, and I agree with him.
Yeah, I think that's what we just stated in many longer terms there.
And Hachizenki is mentioning that bubbles need to get popped to help markets reach equilibrium.
Agreed.
The bubble that we're looking at right now has formed over the past couple of years, oversupply and overprice. And we're seeing both are translating into too many watches available too often at too many price points from too many brands. And it's actually having the opposite effect. Instead of making lots of money selling lots of expensive watches, they are watching them sell for pennies on the dollar, and they're mutually depreciating. Okay. Hachizenki, Shimano is a publicly traded company apparently. Really? I thought it was still controlled by the founding family. Maybe they have a plurality of the shares.
We'll do a show on Shimano one day.
Yeah, we'll do. Mike Wall, you need to consider SRAM Red ETAP. I might be doing a custom Calfee this year, so I will do exactly that. Good gouge, as we say in the Navy. Spiros, hello, Josh and Tim from DC finally made the live show. Welcome, we're glad to have you.
What's up, man? How are you?
And, okay. Canuck S, want a 100% Swiss watch. He says your best bet is something stamped with Qualité Ferrier, so the likes of Chopard definitely leading that charge. The LUC line is where you'll find it in the greatest variety.
I was going to ask you, Tim, actually. I have a question for you, if you don't mind. I have a customer who's really, really high on Laurent and Ferrier watches. What are your thoughts on Ferrier?
Well, I mean, anytime, and I can say this with total confidence, anytime the founding father of the company comes over from decades of building complications for Patek Philippe, you're off to a flying start. I like the fact that they are willing to keep volume fairly low and yet innovate with everything from unconventional colors and tones on the dials to square cases. Non-round watches are often the kiss of death for smaller brands. To direct impulse escapements that are very technically ambitious for a small manufacturer. It's worth noting that a lot of their earlier watches were designed with help from outside. You know, the MP division of Hublot was originally a company called B&B Concept, and one of the partners stayed with the company when it was absorbed by Hublot. The other two went off and founded a company called Fabrique du Temps out of Geneva that was ultimately bought by LVMH. So they have built the Louis Vuitton calibers. They have designed every Louis Vuitton caliber that's made in-house, and they do build the Louis Vuitton Geneva seal complications. Well, those two gentlemen who left from B&B Concept and founded Fabrique du Temps helped to do most of the heavy lifting and early assembly on the first Laurent Ferrier calibers. So I'm not going to say that they're universally on the same level as the likes of an FP Journe or something like even a Greubel Forsey, which is getting up there. But they are definitely a brand with integrity, a great pedigree. Those are collaborative ventures, those earlier calibers. And I think you'll find that as they get more and more ability to build and engineer and finish movements in-house, you're left with just the best of the best.
Yeah, I think, so my idea was when I was speaking to him, and I'm glad you kind of reinforced it, that it's a small boutique brand, but it's in the realm of like being a more affordable small boutique brand. Obviously, listen, they're not selling
tens of thousands of dollars for the watches, but we're comparing them to the likes of Greubel Forsey.
Right. And even Journe.
Yeah, even Journe.
Right, exactly. So in terms of price point, it's like in that column with all these boutique brands, but it's going to be on the lower end, which in my opinion gives a little bit more value.
Yeah. The other thing is you're talking about a very low volume brand though that's going to have precipitous drops in resale value from retail to resale. We've seen it because we've been offered them and we've made very modest offers.
Yeah.
And I'd also say that
it's not a huge market for it. That's the point.
That's correct.
Right? The demand does not exist because they're not in your face. But in terms of horological value, I think it's really high, right?
I think, I think when you look at what you're actually getting in the watch, you're getting a tremendous amount in the watch. Also worth mentioning, they have a great variety of watches and calibers for a relatively new and small company. I love what they've done in the past with enamel too. Some of their watches have been almost conservative to a fault, but some of the World Traveler calibers have been very impressive in both their aesthetic and their mechanical presentation.
Cool.
And if you want to learn a little bit more about Fabrique du Temps, search for I want to say Michel Nivas and Enrico Barbasani, I think is his name. Those are the two guys who co-founded B&B Concept with Matthias Boutet, who stayed with Hublot. Really great company. They have tremendous capability. They even do work for companies that are not within the LVMH orbit. They actually built a tourbillon for Ralph Lauren, which is a Richemont-owned joint venture. Interesting company. Okay, so questions coming through. This is from Grand Prix. Tim, how is the Breguet 5817 Big Date Marine? You won't be disappointed. If you want a sports watch that's big and oddly pairs the look of a pocket watch with the proportions and architecture of a wristwatch, I've never warmed up to the Breguet look.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's cool. That watch is, especially the Breguet Marines. It's for the guy who wants an Hublot but wants some horological value, because it wears. It's big. It's a larger watch. It's gonna be a diver. It usually comes on a rubber strap. They have them on bracelets as well. But obviously, I mean, A.L. Breguet, the father of the tourbillon, right? So
yeah, I mean, the name meant a lot in the 90s, and in the 2000s and to present, Swatch has invested tremendously in upgrading the calibers. Most of them are either Frédéric Piguet's or Lemagne built calibers. Of course, Lemagne now folded into Breguet as manufacturer Breguet, but in the Marine family, you're going to get calibers that began their life elsewhere, although in many cases upgraded with higher levels of finish, with silicone hairsprings. In some cases, rates have been upgraded. It just meaningful changes, and then you're looking at just the finish in the case of the dial. The cases are beautifully made. They're cold rolled to create that coined flank, and then hand finished to remove any imperfections. The dials are beautifully made with traditional rose lathe guilloche. I think you're getting something that's very beautiful but very particular. It's kind of like a gourmet meal involving kale and onions. It's going to be very particular to a specific kind of taste. It's going to be very strong. It's going to have a tremendous amount of character. If you're that particular person who has that taste, it's going to be heavenly. And if you're not, you may find that you never fully warm up to it. So I would say...
So good with analogies, Tim.
I was very, very talented at the SAT once upon a time. I think they eliminated the analogies, though.
Yeah,
and for those of you who've never taken an SAT because you're international, I'm sorry. U.S. domestic standardized test joke from our youth.
I definitely outscored my grades for sure.
Yeah. This guy's smart one way or another. Don't let him get the upper hand. Okay. Hachi Zenki suggesting that Laurent Ferrier equals FP Journe. I'm going to say not quite. No. Journe was very determined from the beginning to do everything in-house with tremendous personality, to the point that a lot of his watches, if you've looked at them, are polarizing. I think a lot of the early Laurent Ferrier designs were so sterile and conservative that they lose a little bit of emotional appeal, at least to me. I would like to see an independent have the courage to strike out on his own and make watches that look as unique as the people behind them. That doesn't mean showboat, that doesn't mean they have to become Hublot, but I think if you want to look at the way to do it, F.P. Journe is definitely the model.
Yeah.
F.P. Journe, Kari Voutilainen, Andreas Streller, none of these guys build generic-looking watches, but all of them are revered independents. And hey, Moser, let's throw them out. A few hundred watches a year, they're definitely in that category.
Sure. Models for the industry, really.
Okay, so greetings from Jakarta. We've got friends all over the world. Welcome. I want to give a shout out to Hondakin. I really appreciate you getting up early. And those of you who are staying up late in the Middle East and Europe, I want to thank you for sticking with us. I want to give a shout out to my producer, Faylene Jerome, who kept me at least on topic tonight, not so much on time. We ran long, but we had fun doing it. I want to give a shout out to my good friend Josh Thanos here, the best co-host.
Good to see you back.
And he'll be back with us after next week, because I am going to SIHH. I will be in Geneva. I want to give a personal invitation to any of you who will be staying for SIHH. We're going to be in the Hotel President Wilson in Geneva. Every night after the dinners, I'll be there in the lounge. If you want to meet with me, chat watches, do some wrist checks, we'll have a lot of fun. For the rest of you, rest assured, we're still going to have videos going live all of next week. OJ's going to have his 2 shows, and he's going to try to fill in for one of mine on either.
I'm going to try to get on with OJ.
Yeah, we're going to try to do one of the evening shows, and we're going to give you plenty of a shout out on the channel to make sure that at least one of our 3 live evening shows sticks with you.
I want to ask you guys, if you see Tim in Switzerland, please get a selfie and send it to at Watch You Want on Instagram, please. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll send you something real nice. So guys, thank you so much. Again, our broadcast schedule will resume as originally scheduled. Not this coming week, but the week after. We're still going to have great content. Subscribe to the channel if you like it. Follow us on Instagram, and I will see you guys in just a little more than a week's time. I'm Tim. He's Josh. This is Watch You Want. Thanks for logging on.